Okay, tonight we're going to get into the fun stuff. Ooh, what a pretty sound. Everybody hear that?
What's that?
You'll grow to love that brap. Ooh, heaven. Anyway, a real quick review. The real important thing we talked about last week was a digi and a node. And the thing we want to get across from last week is that you should use a node if you have a choice. Because when you use a node to talk in your and you're done. Now it's the node's responsibility to get it down the chain, and he will work at it till he makes it. Okay? So if you've got your station, several nodes, we've got a couple chairs up front here. Oh my God, I
Go send that to you now?
No, you don't. You can leave.
Feels good, huh?
Anyway, the point is kind of startling. I saw a screen over there, and I was wondering how it was tied into this system. The point is that if you're setting up a channel, if you have a chain of several nodes between you and who you're trying to talk to,
Each link of the chain is controlled by the two nodes
on each end of that chain. You know, the chain is only
the seg node.
if there's a problem in that link, he'll work at it, he'll get it there. And then once it gets to the second node, it's the second node's responsibility to get it to the third node, etc. So anytime there's any transmissions, because of corruption due to noise or another station coming up at the same time, the two stations or the two nodes on each end of the are retransmitting the frame. The packet error free just sends it on. He doesn't care. So now you've got all kinds of weak links in your chain, and if any one of those links goes down, you got to start all over again. So the efficiency is very bad, the throughput is very bad, it just doesn't work very well. So never use a digi unless you have no choice. The other thing to remember is everybody's TNC can be used as a digi. So that's great if you're in an area where you can't radiate a strong signal due to being in a condo, can't have outdoor antennas, can't run a lot of power, whatever. As long as you can get to somebody, you can digi through them to get to a node, to get to the world. So there's a lot of power here. It's great to use other people's fabulous stations if you're in a position not to have one. On voice, you sit there and you listen to this DXer running his California kilowatt and his 20 element log periodic. But on packet, you can use it. It's great, great stuff. Any questions on what we covered last week or the weeks preceding? Or everybody's got this down pat?
Well, I just had one. Thinking about the connection that you maintain over the weekends to your friend in California. What are the mechanics there of, as far as how many channels or whatever? You're not tying up the nodes so nobody else can use it, are you?
No.
Going to another separate location?
Yeah, what I do, the question is, how do I set up my my links on the weekends to California? As I mentioned in one of the earlier classes, Saturday morning I set up a link to several friends in California. Some are on 2 meters, one's on 20 meters. And I leave all these virtual channels up all weekend. I type stuff to them. Later on they come into the shack, the different guys, they see the information. They answer back to me. Later on I come into the shack. I see their answers, I answer them back, and we talk all weekend without spending a lot of time. Okay, what I do there is I set up one link to the sysop, and that's his call, K6MGM. Okay, no SSID. And then if I connect to the node, and we're going to get more into this a little later on, if I connect to the node and then tell the node on 20 meters to connect to somebody in 2 meters, okay, if I don't do anything after 15 minutes, I will get disconnected. The nodes are set up, the default, and some sysops change these, but the default is if you connect to a node, tell the node to connect to somebody else, and then you don't type something for 15 minutes, it will disconnect you to free up the node for somebody else, which is the way it should be. Now, we talked about last week how TNCs will sit there every 5 minutes unless you change the default. They'll ask the other end, are you there? And the other end will say, yeah, I'm here. They'll say, okay, the link's up. Okay? That doesn't count. The node says that's not information. Okay? So the fact that you got a node on 2 meters in California going through the node onto 20 to me and saying, are you there? And I'm saying, yes, I'm there. That doesn't reset that timer, the inactivity timer. So what I do there is called cross-band digying. So in other words, I type C space W6EMC, which is a friend of mine, space via space K6MGM-2, and I'm going to show you this in a bit. What I'm doing is I'm setting up that node now to act as a cross-band digi. Okay, cross-band digis work fairly well, as opposed to what you might call monoband digis, like you're on 2 meters and you digi through somebody on the same frequency. So what I'm doing here, my throughput is not quite as good, but I'm not tying up that node. Anytime I type something, if that node hears it on 20 meters in California, he repeats it on 2 meters, but he doesn't care if the other end got it. If the other end gets it, then he sends an ACK back, and then it comes back to me. See, so I'm not tying up that node. It's still available, because you know your nodes can only support so many people that connect to it, and then tell the node to connect to somebody else, because it requires buffer. Remember, on VHF, you're 1200 baud, on HF, you're 300. So if I were to connect to the node in California, I would do it at 300, and I'd type, how are you doing? And it would go out on 2 meters at 1200. The guy on 2 meters would answer me at 1200, but it's got to buffer it because it can only get it to me at 300. So it requires buffer in a crossband node, like a cam, like this thing, for each connection. So you can only have so many connections because you only have so much memory. See? So to avoid tying up this piece of equipment, I use it as a crossband digi. We're going to get into this a little later on. When do you want to use a crossband digi as opposed to a node? And that's one of the reasons you do it right there.
Connections in between nodes, then don't dump every 15 minutes. So
if I do it on a crossband digi basis, no, because I'm not tying up anything.
now this is your last link in the chain that you're doing that with, or?
Well, see, I'm on 20 meters,
Oh, and you go straight out.
and I go straight out there on 20. See? If you want to go through a bunch of them, then you've got to use the node function. Because you can't, if you start digging through them, your throughput's going to go down, your retransmission rate's going to go up, and you're going to tie up the frequency, and people are going to get upset with you. Okay, so you don't use digis unless you have to.
What's the maximum number of connects that a node can take from different systems trying to connect?
It depends on how the sysop sets them up. TX is set for maximum, and what is that, Les? 5 or 6?
5.
5, okay, it's 5.
About DEN?
DEN, that's NetROM, and I really don't know. See, unfortunately, everything I know about NetROM and D-NET, I've learned by playing with the things, because I've never seen the documentation, but it'll handle a lot. But how much, I really don't know. Really don't know.
In regards to the 15-minute disconnect, you said if you're not typing, if you're receiving something from a bulletin board that's 20 minutes, will it disconnect as long as there's activity between the two?
Well, when you connect to a node and tell the node to connect like to a BBS, and we'll demo a BBS here maybe tonight, as long as there's iframes going in either direction, that resets the timer. It doesn't make any difference which direction.
Tied up to something else.
So if you're trying to keep a node up, just hitting a carriage return is an iframe, and that'll keep it up. That's kind of cheating. I mean, there's no sense holding up a node if you're not using it, because other people get it busy when they try.
But if you're downloading.
Yeah, if you're downloading it. Yeah, once an iframe comes in from either direction, the inactivity timer is reset. He doesn't care which end of the link is sending information, because he knows there's a lot of cases where one end is going to type just one or two things, and all the information for the next 2 hours is going to be coming from the other end. So all he cares about that is one of you is sending something. If you're not sending something, then he's going to dump you so that somebody else can use the node. Any other questions? Okay, we're going to talk first about NetROM, which is basically the same as D-NET. Now here, we had the monitor function on a little earlier. UI. Anybody remember what UI stands for? Unnumbered information frame. In other words, KQ0J-2 is sending out an ID. Since we're on a cam, it says that this is on our VHF port. That's what the -V is. It's a UI, and it sent out this ID. VNet, which is the type of firmware it is using, is plus 2.08. That's the firmware version. The alias is DEN. I can connect to KQ0J-2, or I can connect to his alias, which is DEN. Here's the Denver Radio Club. W0TX sent out an ID, again on the voice channel, say unnumbered information. It says W0TX, which is R means it's the call letters. If we want to digi through it, the alias is DRC for Denver Radio Club. So I could say connect to K6MGM space via DRC, and anytime the station hears that frame, it will digi it. It will repeat it. It doesn't care whether it got there or not. It's just going to send it out. W0TX-3 is the gate. That is the crossband digi. If I'm on 2 meters and I want to talk to somebody that's on 14105, which is where TX is, and I do not want to tie up the node, or if I want to call CQ, and we're going to talk about how to call CQ later on, then I would say connect C space K6MGM, who's over on 20 meters, space V for via, space W0TX-3. When I hit my carriage return, that frame goes out. W0TX-3 is going to hear it there on 2 meters, and he's going to repeat it on 20 meters. He could care less whether the guy on 20 meters hears it or not. He's just repeating it. Okay? This is the SSID. Now we have an SSID of -7, W0TX-7. If I want to connect to the node and then tell the node to connect to somebody on 20 meters, then I would say C space W0TX-7. Connect me to W0TX-7. W0TX-7 would come back with the UA saying you got it. And then I'm going to show you later on how to do this, but I would tell TX, you call somebody, K6MGM on 20, and you tell me when you got them. So TX-7 will go out there, connect to them, come back and tell me link made. I'd say, hi Denny, who's the sysop of K6MGM. W0TX-7 would send me a receiver ready saying, I got it. My STA light would go out my TNC because my packet has been acknowledged. Now it's sitting here in TX, and it's his job on 20 meters to get it out. Okay? And he may have to try 3 or 4 times down there, but at least I am not tying up 20 or 2 meters trying to get it out, which I would be if I was over here. Because here, it would go to TX-3, TX-3 would send it out, and if there had to be a noise burst in case K6MGM didn't get it, I'd sit there, my retry would increment by 1, my frac timer would finally time out and say, well, I guess he didn't get it because he didn't answer, so I'll send it again. Okay, so I go in here on 3, out on, go in here on 2 meters, and go out on 20. Okay, so I'm tying up 2 meters, trying to get it out on 20 meters. You see the difference?
That's when you call
Any hands?
That's when you call them on the telephone to see if you got it.
Right. You betcha. I don't know what we do. A hand, okay.
The /G and the /M then are how you determine whether that particular derived channel is digipeater or?
Right. The /G says this is a gate, which means that it's a crossband digi. It's a gateway. I'm going to send it in there, and it's just going to repeat it. Just repeat it. It doesn't care whether it got there or not. /N is a node. You're going to connect to the node, tell the node to do the work for you. B is BBS. In other words, if I want to connect to the BBS and leave a message or read messages, and we're going to demo this later on, then I would connect to this. Okay?
So then the various ways of addressing W0TX are just simply listed there as a menu.
Right. Most cams, that's a cam now, will ID this way. This allows me to digi on the same frequency I'm on, the D. So I would say C space somebody via DRC, and when my packet goes out or my frame goes out, he repeats it on the same frequency. The gate says whatever I get, I'm going to repeat on a different frequency. Okay, so this is a crossband digi, same band digi. That's the mailbox, that's the node. So these cams, which are two TNCs in one box on two different frequencies and hooked together, are much more sophisticated than the D-NET nodes or the NetROM nodes. They're kind of synonymous. They're two different. They're firmware written by two different outfits, but basically the same function. And they're single band things. So we're going to start with these guys first.
Bill, W0TX/R then is the same band digi. Is that slash?
Well, yeah, you could go ahead and digi through this if you want, a repeater. This is the call and this is the alias. Either one of them will digi on the same frequency that you're on.
DRC/end radio /D is the alias, right?
Just DRC.
So what's the /D?
That tells you that this is a digi.
Okay.
The /G says this is a gateway, which is a crossband digi. The /N says this is a node. And the /B says this is a bulletin board, BBS bulletin board.
And you said B was the voice channel?
Well, this is the monitor mode. Don't get into that right now, because when we demo this thing, we're going to show it to you. In this area right here, I had the monitor on the cam to see who was on the frequency. And if there was a /V that says I heard it on 2 meters, if there was a /H, I heard it on HF. The cam is two TNCs in one. So disregard this right now until we get into the cam, and then this will make more sense. This is getting deeper. We got to start with the simpler stuff and go into it. Les?
Well, we understand that correctly. You use DRC, but you don't use anything after the slant. The slant is just information to you
Right.
that you do not type in in order to use it.
Right. I just had the monitor on when we first turned it on. It was on from last week. See, because I turned it off here. So I just kind of want to point some of this stuff out. LJF, W0LJF-4 sent out an ID, and it was heard on the VHF channel on this thing. It's a UI, it's a D-NET, so it tells us it's D-NET software or firmware as opposed to NetROM. They all work the same. What version? And it's ARA4. This node is on Conifer Mountain. This node is out on about 120th, somewhere out there. Okay, so we'll get into a lot of this stuff. A little later on, after we play with the nodes and everything, then we'll play with the TNC and show you what all this means. But let's connect to Denver, DEN, and play with it a little bit. So I'll say C space DEN. I told my TNC, send out a connect request. Okay. When I got the UA back from DEN, that came out of my TNC. That did not come from DEN. When I said C space DEN, that TNC sent out the SABM, the connect request. DEN heard it. He sent back a UA saying, gotcha. My TNC says, I got his UA, you are connected. So this came out of my TNC. Now, when you connect to a NetROM or a D-NET, which, as we talked about last week, is a TNC with a special EEPROM in it and a radio and an antenna. That's all it is. You're not going to get command line. Why clutter up the frequency? Because most people know what the command line is. Let's say I don't know what it is. I can type anything that's not a legal command. I'll just do a carriage return.
Call him on the phone, Bill.
Because I'll have to call him on the phone and say, what's wrong? Hello? Don't you hate it when you demo something and it never works? Okay. DEN, the alias, KQ0J-2, the call, because KQ0J has his call on several nodes on 2 meters and 450, so he's got different SSIDs. The SSID here is 2. Here's my commands. I got buy, connect, CQ, herd, info, nodes, routes, users. See? This is kind of neat. Why, every time somebody connects to one of these things, why broadcast the command line? Because most people know what it is. Why clutter the frequency? Okay. Now, the herd is a nice command. Now, before I get into that, let's do an info. Because the info is kind of important. I type I. You don't have to type the entire word, just type the first letter of it. Okay, DEN is KQ0J-2, Thornton, Colorado, 14501, traffic node, sponsored by Ceres Copa.
What's Ceres Copa?
Ceres...
State ARES.
Pardon me?
The state ARES.
Is that what it is? And COPA is the new organization that's
Colorado Packet Association.
that's formed by people interested in furthering the system and this sort of thing. Now, a lot of times the I command will, it'll tell you a lot of things like, where is it? Who can it get you to? There's all kinds of neat information they can put in here. Okay. So if you connect a node, you're not sure where it is or what it is. The I command is kind of neat. Let's say I want to find somebody to talk to. Now, some of the earlier versions of NetROM don't have the herd command. Okay? This is a fairly new command, but it's neat. Crude, but it's neat. Let's do a herd. I'm asking the node, well, who are you hearing out there in radio land? KE0QA-1, which happens to be us. Since Joe isn't here, we could send 4-letter word. We could get him in trouble. KC0RL-15. Aha, we say this guy is coming through a node somewhere. In other words, he's somewhere in radio land, and he connected to a node, and then he told that node to do something, and DEN heard that node, because see the 15 behind his call? Remember, when I connect to a node, normally, when the node sends my call out, it puts a -15 behind it, so that my TNC doesn't get confused by thinking that's me. The next node, let's say KC0RL-15 connected to another node, and that node sent something out, that node would have a -14 behind it, so the first node wouldn't get confused because he knows the -15. The SSID. KD0EH, WG0N, WG0N-10. This 10 happens to be a node that we have sitting down at the Museum of Natural History.
Hey, Bill, I'd like to move that if you could tilt up the head on the projector, then
A little more?
the head wouldn't be in the way. Then
My-
I would get the picture from higher hat.
Is my fat head getting in the way there?
If you had a glass head, well, it wouldn't be quite so much a problem.
Are you saying if I let it go in this ear, it'd come out this ear and wouldn't block anything?
Well, that's the way we look at it.
Yeah, keep me out of the, I get carried away. Keep me out of the screen so you can see this thing. I forget.
I was enjoying your hand pictures on the screen.
Yeah. If the TV camera wasn't going, I would give you a picture.
You already did.
Very simple picture that everybody in the world understands. I think in Italy it's something like that. Anyway, this list is a little crude in the sense that when this node hears somebody, it puts it into the list. And it keeps it there for 15 minutes. And at the end of 15 minutes, if it doesn't hear that same call, it takes it out of the list. So this guy may have signed off 2 minutes after the node heard him. Okay? So it's not real dynamic. Position means nothing. The fact that this guy's at the end of the list and this guy's at the beginning of the list has no bearing on when the node heard him. What it amounted to is, before they put this command in the firmware, you connected to one of these things, you really never knew who was there. And they had a tiny bit of memory left. So they wrote a little algorithm to put this thing in, so at least it could tell you who it heard in the last 15 minutes. Okay? Crude, but it is nice, because you go cross country on HF, connect to one of these things, say, who have you heard? You try to connect to this guy, and it says, failure. You try this guy, and you get him. So it's a nice way to find out who's out there. So that's called the heard command.
Bill, on some of those, does it give you the time that it heard them?
Not on ROM and D-NET. It does on the CAM and the MSYS, which we'll get into later on. This is all you get here. No times, no anything. If you go into the TNC itself, okay, I did a Control-C. That told the TNC, I'm going to talk to you. I don't want you to transmit what I'm going to send out. This is confidential, guy. This is between you and me. When you do a Control-C, you get out of the converse mode. Converse mode meaning that anything I type goes out. I did a Control-C, which says, okay, guy, this is between you and me. Now, I'm not that familiar with the CAM, but I think it's probably like the 232. Yeah. I typed MH. MH for who have you heard? And it heard W0LSD at this time, and it heard this guy and this guy. So here's the last, probably about 18, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 20. On most TNCs, is the MFJ the same way, MH? Yes. When you type MH, go to command mode, because if you type MH in the voice mode, it goes to the other guys, and he goes say,
Bill, do a MH space L.
on this one? Ah. This is just like the regular nodes. Okay, this is even better. What this says is, this brings out something I'll point out right now. It says that this guy, KF0OU, was on the voice channel. See, we don't have HF here, so we don't have any H's. And he was talking to DEN at this time and date via W0TX-7. Ding ding, tilt tilt tilt, this guy is using -7 as a digi. Bad show. Bad show. Now, so in other words, he said C space for connect, DEN space V for via space W0TX-7, which means now W0TX-7 is just sending frames from him to him via here, and of course TX could care less whether they get there or not. Now, you'll notice the asterisks here, and we're getting ahead of ourselves, but since we're here, see the asterisks? Up here we have no asterisks, which means that KC0CZ, oh yeah, you remember last week when KC0CZ connected to us? Remember that when we talked about how we showed a connect request on the screen and we sent him a busy message? Well, that happens to be the connect. It's still in the memory. See, we heard him connecting to us. Here, when you have the asterisks, that means we did not hear this guy with the asterisk on the right. but we heard TX repeating his packet to DEN. If we'd have heard this guy, there would have been no asterisks. We would have heard this guy going via TX to DEN. But when the asterisks show up on a cam, then you heard the guy that has the asterisk on the left. You did not hear the guy that had it on the right. Here's somebody talking to DENBox. Here's W0TX sent out an ID. Here's W0LJF, W0LJF sent out an ID. Both of those are the ones you saw earlier on the other screen. So if you do an MH, in this case long means not only tell me who you heard, but tell me who he was talking to. That's a neat feature of the cam. The 232 doesn't have it. Does the MFJ have that? Probably not.
About the PK88?
Probably not. It's very similar to 232. The 232 just says who you heard and when. Question?
Do an L long on there too.
Yeah, let me get into that. We're getting way ahead of where I want to be right now. We're still working on simple connect and things like that.
Before you do that, let me catch up a little bit, Bill, on the KF0OU.
Okay.
I know you shouldn't be using W0TX-7 as a digi. How did you say he did that?
Okay, he typed C space DEN space V for via space W0TX-7, which meant that every time his packet goes out, W0TX-7 hears it and repeats it to Denver. And Denver hears it, and he sends it the reverse path automatically. TX hears it and repeats it back to KF0OU. But the point is, TX is just shoving packets this way and shoving them this way. He doesn't care whether they get there or not.
Okay, now what should he have done?
He should have typed C space W0TX-7.
Okay.
And that would have shown up here as KF0OU W0TX. Then he would have told W0TX-7 C space, and we're going to demo this, C space DEN. And TX would establish the connection, and we'd have seen down here W0TX Denver. So we would have shown KF0OU talking to W0TX, and then we'd have shown W0TX talking to DEN. Now I might be embarrassed. Maybe KF0OU is here in the class. I've seen the call.
That's John. He's not here.
Because it dawned on me, this is an old record. Of course, we hadn't talked about it, so it'd be no big
I
deal.
understand. Just one thing that it could be very confusing. If my facts are straight here now, on the PK232, when you hit MH, it'll give you your stations.
Yeah, the MH will look basically just like this one. It'll look just like that.
Yeah, but on a 232, your asterisk means that
You heard it.
you heard it, yeah.
In other words, I heard this station, I didn't hear this station, I didn't hear him. I heard somebody repeating him. That sort of thing, yeah.
So you have to keep in mind then that if it's, whether or not it's coming from the,
Right.
like a 232, or if it's...
Right. You're going to have to really look at your manuals, because how about the MFJ, Dick? Do you have an asterisk that says whether you heard the guy direct or not?
No, for sure.
Okay. On the 232 and the 88, and on this one, if there's an asterisk, it means you heard him. You could connect to him.
MFJ would do that.
Same thing. If there's no asterisk, then it means it heard the call coming from somewhere else, but you didn't hear the actual guy. So if I wanted to talk to WB0EVA-15, that was through a node somewhere. I wouldn't know how to, I wouldn't know which node it was. Okay. Let's get back. We're way ahead of ourselves here. I want to go back. See, I've been talking to the T and C here. Now I want to go back to the converse mode. So I type K. Or if I like to work hard, I could type CONV, or I could type converse. But on most T and Cs, you do a K, which now tells the T and C anything I type, I want to go out over the air. Okay. So let's see if we're still there. Okay, let's take a look at the users command. User says who is using the node, not the frequency. The H command is who's using the frequency that I can hear. The users is who's using me as a node. Let's see if anybody's there. Aha, things are quiet tonight. Remember, I connected to DEN. So it's an uplink, because I set up the link. Nobody's using DEN tonight. Now let's say, this would be a good time to use the telephone to call somebody to have them do something on packet.
Probably call Dave.
I'll connect to COS.
Dave.
Well, COS is pretty slow. Let me disconnect. When I want to disconnect, remember when I said connect, I was in the command mode? If I type the disconnect command right now, it's just going to go out on the air. Unless I type by. In this case, I could type by, which would tell the node to send me the disconnect, and I would send the UA. If I go to the command mode and do a D, then I'm going to send the disconnect, and the node's going to send me a UA back. So you can disconnect either way. So in this case, I'm going to go back, Control C, put me to the command mode, which says I want to talk to TNC, and I want to disconnect. Okay? So I sent the disconnect, DEN sent the UA back, and my TNC said, I got the UA, you're disconnected. That came from my TNC. Now let's try AR. I don't know if we can connect to ARA4. Aha. Let's see if there's users on that one. Things are quiet. You're all in here tonight. Nobody's using the network. Well, let's try COS. COS hears the world, and it's very slow because it hears the world. That's Pikes Peak.
I have a question. Users just tells you all the people who are using that node?
Yeah, remember we talked about uplinks, downlinks, and then people coming through who are circuits.
Right.
And I was hoping to show you some of the things that show up. If not, we'll have to show a slide, because I want to show you all the different things that show up on this so you know what they are.
Say, Bill, to disconnect, if you're in the command mode and you type D, will you still be able to, when you disconnect that?
If I type D or V?
D, bravo. In other words, you're saying buy in command.
Oh, no.
Okay, that won't do it.
No, because see, if I'm in the command mode and I type B, the TNC is going to say B is beacon, you're beaconing. See, it doesn't recognize that as a disconnect mode. It recognizes the D. Well, circuit, ARA4. So here we are, coming in on a circuit from ARA4 to W0LJF-4. Or LJF4, that's part of ARA4, I'll get that right. What this is saying is we have a circuit coming in from KE0QA who came to this node and then set up a circuit to this node. See, it doesn't show that we went anywhere else. I'm amazed how quiet things are tonight. We may have to show a slide on this to show you all the configurations, because you can tell, see, in this case, we've come in from another node on a circuit, but we haven't gone anywhere. So if I were to connect to this node and do a U and saw this, I would know that this guy came and stopped here. Yet there's no circuit going anywhere, there's no downlink going anywhere, there's nothing. Let's do an eye on this, just to show you some of the different eyes. There you go. What this is telling us is you can go to DEN, Boulder, Haswell, Colorado. That's Raton Pass in New Mexico. That's Lamar. That's Fort Collins, and SLV is San Luis Valley. There you go. So that gave me an idea who I could talk to.
How about connecting to Salt Lake?
Oh yeah, you can do that. We're going into that later on. Okay, command mode and disconnect. Okay, let's go back to Denver again. Okay.
Would you have retained the connection to Denver but disconnected from COS?
No. That's the disadvantage of ROM and D-NET. If I use those nodes to set up a link to somewhere, and then any link in that entire chain goes down for whatever reason, the whole thing's gone. On CAMs, it's a totally different story, and we're going to get into that, how you can set up links and then disconnect the guy at the far end and keep everything else up. Okay, that's a disadvantage of these. If any one link goes down, that's it, like a deck of cards.
And the IDs what are the numbers in parentheses at the end of the ID lines? 629, 681.
Oh,
Is that just a
what this is,
number?
see, this is this is version 1.0 of NetROM. I know that this doesn't have that herd command. That number change, that's how much memory is available for that particular time. You won't care about that. I'm not sure why they do that. Okay, we'll get our command line back, hopefully. The trouble I have with this cam, I'm not used to the lights, so I'm not sure about the status. There we go. Okay, so the user's command again tells you who is uplink to the node, downlink from the node, who's calling CQ from the node, and we'll show you that in a bit, who's coming through the node to a downlink, or who's coming up on an uplink and out on a circuit, or who's coming through on a circuit and going out on a circuit. Okay? So you can see who's on the node, and sometimes it's kind of fun if you see anybody on an uplink or a downlink, you know that they're within range of the node because they set up the link or the link was set up to them. So you can go ahead and tell the node to connect to them. Okay? That's one way to find somebody to talk to. If you see a circuit, remember the circuit we had in Colorado Springs that said that was from ARA4? You would tell the node, well, okay, connect to the node on the circuit, and then you would do a users. And you see, well, now the circuit goes to Cheyenne, so you connect to Cheyenne, then you see a downlink at Cheyenne, then you connect to the guy. So you can go track people down and connect to them if you want. That's kind of fun to do. So that's what you use the users command for, to find out who's using the node. Now, again, not who's on the frequency. That's this command. So if I connect to Les, I will not show up on DEN when you do a users, because I'm not using DEN, but I will show up here. Okay? Now let's do a routes. What this tells you is what nodes can DEN talk to directly? What routes go out of his location? Okay, who can he talk to directly as far as other nodes go? Now, unfortunately, a little politics here, NetROMs and D-NETs do not recognize K nodes, MSys nodes, the English nodes, all the other type of nodes out there. They locked in the software where they only tell you what other NetROM/D-NET nodes they heard. So you see the W0TX is not on here. WG0N that we use to talk to the tanker is not on here. These are only nodes of the same family. The other nodes, the K nodes, the English nodes, the MSys nodes, they tell you all the different nodes they hear. Okay? So you're kind of restricted when you do this routes thing. But it tells me that I can connect directly to ARA4, Conifer Mountain, FNL, DEN 450, that's a node that's up on the 450 megahertz, that's part of the backbone, COS, which is Colorado Springs, and KRE, which is Kremling.
What's the 192 after Kremlin?
Okay, good straight man. If you have a 0 here, that is a logical connection. Remember how we talked about when the information frame you had that PID bit set? If that was set to a 1, that told any node that heard that frame that this is for you, this is not some user, this is node stuff. Every so often all these nodes will come up an ID with this special bit. If DEN hears this guy, he says, ah, I can talk to him direct. I will put that in my routing table. Okay? By the way, if we sit here for 15 minutes and don't do anything, DEN will disconnect us. These nodes have an inactivity timer. Now, if after a certain period of time I don't hear the ID, I'm going to take the guy out of my routing table. Now the way it normally works, there's another command we'll look at that shows more of this. But the way it works is, this is dynamic. The 0 indicates that I heard this guy. The 1 indicates that it is either hardwired to this node or it's programmed in to show it whether it's there or not, because it's always going to be there. For example, wherever DEN is located, it is physically connected to the 450 node. So it's a 1, which says it's hardwired, it's always there. You don't care what conditions are. The 0 says this is dynamic. If this guy fades out after a certain amount of time, if I don't hear the ID, I'm going to take him out of there. This number here is the quality. How good is the path? Well, 255 is the best. Well, it's a piece of wire. It ought to be. 192 is about what you'll see on a radio link when things are really good. And the smaller the number, the worse the link. Because these things correspond back and forth. They note how many times do they have to try to get something through. If they got to try more often, they make the number smaller. This number here, don't pay attention to, because that depends on how the sysop sets it up. It's really meaningless for you. So anyway, if I want to connect to a node and then see what radio links he has to adjacent nodes, I can type routes. And you can look at those as channels going out from that node to other nodes. Some of the earlier versions of DNet and NetROM will not give you the alias, it'll just give you the call sign. That's kind of messy, because then you got to try to figure out who it is. The new version is nice. It gives you the aliases. You can just look at it and say, well, you know, Kremling or whatever. Okay.
Sometimes on that same list there'll be a right caret or greater than symbol in front of the over.
Yes, sometimes you will see, like I say, the net is really quiet. What's on TV tonight? I would think the Broncos are playing as quiet as the net is. A lot of times, and thanks for bringing this up, a lot of times you'll see a little caret. What that tells you is somebody is on that link from DEN to ARA4. Okay, that says the link is busy, and if you do a U, you can find out who's on there. Now a lot of times you'll see people, you'll see a little caret here and a little caret here, and you'll do a users and it only shows you. The reason for that is when people disconnect, these nodes are doing a lot of things, and the lowest priority, or one of the lower priorities, is disconnecting the link. So a lot of times you might have somebody coming in here on an uplink to ARA4 and they're crossing to Denver. And he's disconnected, but DEN is busy and he hasn't had time to remove all this disconnect information out. So the fact that you see a caret here doesn't necessarily mean you're going to show somebody on the node. Okay? I've seen those connect little carets stay on there for 10 or 15 minutes after the guy's already gone away. Because that's not real important stuff. You know, everything's got priorities in software.
Going back to that thing you said about NetROM, with this R command, NetROM and D-NET not recognizing certain types of routes, does that work the other way too? You understand my question? In other words, well, this is how should I put it? What, this is not CAM type routing, this is D-NET type.
Right. This, when you ask a D-NET or a NetROM who they can talk to, they can only talk to other D-NETs or other NetROMs. We talked, and this is very important, you know, we talked about adaptive routing and things like that, where I can connect to Denver and say, connect me to Salt Lake, and they'll figure out how to get it there. But they're all talking this high-level, level 3 protocol that you will hear on your TNC but not decode unless you got a problem. See, this decodes everything that's on the channel, and even noise. So he watches all this stuff. But the point is, these nodes talk at a very high level to each other, where the CAMs and the MSys and these other category of nodes cannot talk at that high a level. So they're not as efficient. Okay? And since these TNCs, or these nodes, talk to each other at the high level, they update each other and they derive how am I going to get somebody to somewhere. On the CAMs and the level 2 stuff, you have to tell it how to get you there. It doesn't know that. So that's part of the reason. If these things could actually talk that high level.
So you're just talking at the CAM level, so to speak.
If you're talking to the CAM level, it will not show up here.
Routes.
No.
All right.
No. No, the CAMs cannot do that. All the CAMs can tell you is who they can hear. See? Now they can talk. I can tell DEN to connect to a K node. I can tell it to connect to anybody. It does it at a level 2, a lower level. So they can all talk, but as far as this automatic stuff, since it's done at level 3, only people that can talk at a level 3. If you have somebody that's running what's called TCP/IP or a high level of MSys that emulates this, then he will show up here because he is in actual fact a node. But a regular TNC can't do it. Okay, any questions on that?
Yeah, let me just kind of recap here what you were saying about the routing and all this sort of stuff. Okay, it's only the D-NET and the NetROM that you can get the routes, the routing information. Is that correct?
As a general rule, there are levels of MSys that will do it,
Okay.
but they're running a higher level of software to allow them to emulate this stuff and to talk to this stuff.
But then when even if you've got D-NET or NetROM and you ask it the routes, it's only going to tell you about the other D-NET/NetROM.
NetROMs, right.
It's not going to tell you about
Right.
any CAMs.
Right.
Okay.
And on 145.01, we have what you might call a US-wide network, okay, made up of these things. 145.01, that's kind of it's kind of like 146.52, the nationwide simplex channel. All these things reside on this frequency. You'll find them elsewhere, but the 145.01 is the basic NetROM frequency. And we have TX up there, we have WG0N up there, to allow people to come in from different parts of the world, cross over to 145.01, and then take the NetROM system and through automatic routing go to Albuquerque or go up to Cheyenne or wherever. See? So that is a network. The CAMs reside on a lot of other frequencies, but it's not a network, but you can use them to hop all over the place, but you got to know how to get there. It's not a network per se. It's not an automatic network. Okay?
Now, Bill, let me ask, it might be a dumb question, but then...
Oh, none of them are, the only ones that are dumb are the ones that aren't asked, or the ones I can't answer.
This thing, and you would say, heard, right? You'd connect to one of these guys, and say heard, and it would show you who you can connect to, or who's being heard, then you might be able to connect to one of them, and then you can say heard again. And is that the way you would then struggle through a series of connections and
Well,
have access to the...
if I'm going to go through the network and try to work my way somewhere, I would use the nodes command that we're going to get into. If I connect to a node somewhere and I want to know who it's hearing, because I want to find a human to talk to, I can do the heard, and it's going to tell me the stations it's hearing. So I can tell that node, okay, connect me to this person here. So the heard list is used more to find what stations are out there that the node is hearing. The nodes list that I'm going to bring up in a second is to tell you what nodes that I can get to.
So herd would tell me nodes. I mean, I might see a node on herd. But
Yeah, nodes may show up on herd, yes.
I couldn't tell it was a.
Yeah, you can't really tell. That's the frustrating part about it. You might go through 20 of these and you get out there to Albuquerque somewhere or El Paso and you do a herd and you see this call and you say, well, I'll try him, a human. You connect to it and it says, hi, I'm not home. Leave a message. Oh, God. Now I got to drop the entire link all the way down to El Paso and start all over again because I wound up with another machine, no human. See? Now on cams, it's a different story. I can say, okay, cam, you connect me to this cam, you connect me to this cam, because I know how to get to El Paso. I get to El Paso, I ask who had heard, like we did with the MH. I see this guy, connect to him, and it says, hi, you reached my mailbox. I'm not here. I can tell that far, no, well, disconnect him, but don't drop this thing, and then I can poke around and find somebody else. So there's neat things about each kind of node configuration. Okay? So the D-NET and the net ROMs are an automatic system. Okay, now let's do a nodes.
Bill, isn't that TCP/IP? Will show you this same thing, but at one level higher.
Yeah, TCP/IP is a very complex system that has automatic mail forwarding, automatic message forwarding, automatic routing. It emulates this stuff, it emulates that stuff. It's very sophisticated.
A lot of these older ones will read it, but your letters will be all over the screen.
Yeah, some of the older TNCs, if you get a lot of garbage on your screen and you have pass all off, then you've got a real problem. Okay, what I've done now notice how long this is? And we had an error because we didn't decode it. You don't want to do this command a real lot. I think we got a little phase distortion here because we're not decoding in that. Remember, the longer the packet, the greater the odds are it ain't going to make it. You hear how long that is, and we're not getting it. So we got some phase distortion. What's that?
Spark gap sounds better than that.
Well, AM is right in there too. See, we're having trouble decoding that. I might mention here, you're seeing the classic example where he's 40 over S9 and we're not decoding it. You know, when you look at a TV picture, you see the picture and you see an image of the picture, a ghost. Well, that kills packet. Packet cannot handle multipath and phase distortion. And many, many times, now we're starting to come, many times I've had situations where the station is 700 over S9 and I can't work them. If I go out there and move my antenna 6 inches like in your 2-meter mobile, or I stick a piece of wire in the back, all of a sudden I can hear them. Because now I hear the direct signal, I don't hear the reflection. Remember how we talked a week or two ago about these nodes all ID, the special ID. And I'm sitting in Denver here. And I see Colorado Springs ID and I put him in my routing table. Remember when I did routes? And I see FNL, Fort Collins, and I put him in there. Now, Fort Collins, he's sitting up there and he sees Cheyenne ID. But I don't in Denver. DEN doesn't see it. Fort Collins tells me that he knows how to get to Cheyenne. So I put that in this nodes table. So if somebody connects to me and says, I want to talk to Cheyenne, I can go, well, I look at my routing table. I don't know Cheyenne. I don't see him. I look at my nodes table and I say, oh yeah, FNL, Fort Collins, he knows how to do it. So I'll ship this connect request up to Fort Collins and let him take care of it. And Cheyenne up there is doing the same thing. Cheyenne says, I know how to talk to Rock Springs. So that's passed down here to Denver. So Denver says, oh, somebody wants to get to Rock Springs, Wyoming? I know how to do it. I ship it up to FNL and let him worry about it. So what DEN is telling us is, I know how to get you to these locations. I can get you to Wells, which is in Nevada. I think that's in Wyoming, LAM. LU3. Where am I looking for LU3?
Down, right there.
The Lord knows he could be coming in through Gateway. Because that's what, Argentina? That's in New Mexico. That's in Utah. Okay, but the point is, theoretically, if I want to connect to any one of these stations, I just, at this point in time, I say C space, whoever it is, and DEN will know how to get me there. This is called the nodes list. Okay? Here's Steamboat Springs. That's Scottsbluff, Nebraska. There's Dinosaur National Park. Here's Albuquerque.
Hey, Bill, what would make somebody dream of an alias like other?
They're doing some kind of testing on that, so they, you see some strange things come up here.
Publications out, it gives most of these abbreviations.
The best you're going to find is, and probably next week we'll demo this, when you can log into a BBS and ask it for packet maps of different states, and it will get you a map on the screen and show this. It'll show like in the map of Colorado, it'll show DEN here, COS over here, etc. And then they list underneath the call, the alias, where it is, what mountain it's on, and a lot of times they'll give you additional information like good route to whatever. Okay, so these packet maps are shipped all over the place on this message forwarding system we talked about way back at the beginning. Okay, the local BBS here has maps of Germany, all kinds of crazy places. So anyway, what this thing is telling us is I know how to connect to these people. Now, one thing I want to emphasize is in here it says that I can connect to LHX. Well, I'm going to show you in a bit after coffee how to figure out how it does it. But in the meantime, that's Haswell, down south of here. I wouldn't connect to Haswell and then turn right around and do a nodes list again, because his nodes list, being 2 or 3 nodes out, it's going to be basically the same as this. And you can see all of this information, how long it took. We had to repeat it. And you'll see people on 2 meters, they'll connect to DEN. They'll do a nodes list. They say, oh, I'll try COS. They connect to COS. They do a nodes list. It's practically a carbon copy. Now you're tying up the frequency from Colorado Springs to here and from here to you. And then they turn around and they connect to, should be DPK on here, yeah, Pueblo. Hey Keith, your mascot's flying around here. Pueblo, and then I connect to Pueblo and I do a nodes list, and all of this stuff comes down from that link to Colorado Springs to Denver to me. You get a couple of guys going a node out at a time and doing a nodes list, and they can just kill a frequency. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is, if you're working your way across country, I'm going to show you how to do this, get out there a ways, like 6 or 7 nodes out, and then do another nodes list, and you'll see like LA and and Seattle, and then you can do a routing that I'm going to tell you about to get up there. Okay. Because this kind of stuff just ties up the frequency. There are some nights when you can't hardly get through and you turn your monitor on and you see 3 guys downloading nodes list, and it kills the frequency. So use this command with discretion. And anytime you do a nodes list and you're working your way through the network, as I'm going to show you to do later on, get out there 5 or 6 nodes before you do another one. Because, yeah, when you get out there 5 or 6 nodes away, it's going to start changing on you. But keep in mind, your node knows who the nodes on either side of it can talk to, and it knows who they can talk to. Okay, so if you go 3 nodes out and do a nodes list, you're going to basically get the same thing you got here. Because that node 3 nodes out is knowing who you can talk to and who the intermediate node can talk to. So it's the same stuff you've already got. Okay, so don't clobber the frequency doing nodes lists like crazy, because it goes on all the time and it kills us.
Are all of these nodes on QOJ VHF?
In this case, yes. Yeah, we're on the 2 meter system right now.
Can there be cross-banding on?
Yes, this may have been where this came through. Because a guy can set up a NetROM on HF and have it uplink its information through a gateway like TX to DEN, and that's done every once in a while.
Another question: if I wanted to connect to Wells, can I command to connect to WA9
Right.
W-1?
You can connect to the alias or you can connect to the call. Either one. Now, let me mention this and then we'll take a coffee break. Right now, DEN tells me he can connect me to Wells. Well, different sysops set up the nodes in a different manner. And my experience has been that if I want to connect to Wells, I probably won't make it if I tell DEN to do it. If I know how DEN does it, then I can tell DEN, hey, go out about 3 nodes, 3 nodes out, connect to that node. And then when I get a link made, then I can tell that node, go out another 3 nodes and connect to that node. And then once I get connected to that node now, which was 6 out, I tell that node, connect to Salt Lake or to Wells in this case. Okay? So what I'm going to show you after coffee is how to determine how does he get to Wells so that I can node hop. I can go every 3rd or 4th node out and set up the links. It's some kind of a weakness in the software. He says I can do it, and we'll see if he can. I doubt it, but oops. So I just told Denver, connect me to Wells. Maybe he'll do it, maybe he won't. I happen to know how you get there. So what I would do if I were really trying to do this from home, I would tell DEN connect to Grand Junction. I would tell Grand Junction to connect to Snow, which is that big mountain outside of Salt Lake City. And then I would tell Snow to connect to Wells. And that'll usually go through. So we'll see if this makes a liar out of me while we go to coffee. We'll let us sit here and see what happens. Okay? Up on us. Okay, now let's say we want to try to get to Wells, and we won't pursue this real far. Would you take your mascot home?
Hey, no charge tonight.
We don't eat much.
Why don't you feed him? Okay, so we'll connect to Dan again. Why did we... Oh, there we go. I didn't wait long enough or something. Like I say, I'm not that familiar. Okay, let's say I want to find out how do I get to Wells. I would type N for nodes, space, Wells. What I asked him is, how would you get me to Wells? Well, he's only got one way of getting me there, and that's through Kremling. And the path to Wells is clear down to a 61. Remember, 255 is a piece of wire. 192 is about the best on radio. This is 61. Somebody is on their route. There's the little carrot. Let's pick one other one so I can show you that sometimes he has alternate ways of getting there. Let's try Dinosaur National Park. It's hard typing in the dark. I don't know if the volume is critical on this thing or not.
Evidently it is.
Have it right?
Yeah. There we go. Oh, one way to get there.
Why is that thermometer 100 and something now when it was 161?
Because I'm only going as far as Dinosaur National Park, which is here in Colorado, right at the border of Utah. Wells is almost to California. So it's further, so therefore I got more links, more radio. The path is worse. The more nodes you have and the longer the path, the worse the conditions. This is a lot closer, Dinosaur National Park. Well, let's see. Let's try Albuquerque. Okay, what was that? ABQ he had on there? One route to Colorado Springs. The weather coming in may have some strange things going on here. Let's try HPAC. HPA RC? HPA. HPA.
High Plains Amateur Radio.
Oh, is that what that? Where is that?
Down in
Sterling.
Sterling, Colorado.
Sterling, okay. It's really interesting. When the weather gets bad, you can see things really happen in the network. Weather definitely affects us. You got to be careful when you type the name in here, because if you mistype it and it's not on this table, he'll give you the whole table over again because he doesn't know who you're talking to or about. So be very careful.
Hey, Bill,
There we go.
the idea that it'll continue printing out or showing the nodes, what happens when it shows all of them? How do you know when it shows you all the nodes that are connected?
Well, they're alphabetically arranged, see, and when you get down to V and W's and then nothing happens, you can pretty well be assured you're at the end of the line.
No, I mean the nodes that are connecting you to HPARC.
Uh-huh.
Right now it's showing us 2. Is that all the ones it takes to get to HPARC?
No, what he's saying is, if you tell me to connect to HPRC, I'm going to try to go to COS first because he has the best path to Sterling. If it fails, then I will try this, ARA4, because ARA4 somehow knows how to get there. See? So when all these nodes tell each other who they know how to get to, they also pass on the quality information. And here,
HPARC stand for?
High Plains Amateur Radio Club.
Amateur Radio Club.
So here's a case where, remember we talked about, remember that we had that little diagram where we had 3 nodes set up there, and we had the little packets flying around showing time division multiplexing, and we talked about alternate routes and direct routes. Well, that's what happens here. If I tell DEN to connect to HPARC, he will go to COS first and tell COS to do it. If COS comes back later on and says, I can't do it, you know, like we got up here with, right here, he will then try ARA4. And then let's say it makes it. You will not know how it got there. If I wind up telling Denver to connect to HPARC and then I get a failure with HPARC, HPARC, I will know that he tried both of these routes. If I get a connected to, I have no idea which way it went. There are ways to do that, but I'm not going to get into that right now.
Are you getting only an answer to HPARC?
Right.
You got only the first leg then. If there were more,
Right.
you don't know what they are from that.
Right. Let's do that. I'll say, well, I wonder how COS does it. So now I'm going to tell DEN to connect to COS. I keep forgetting you're back here.
That's all right.
What I'm doing in this case now is I'm going to go to COS and ask it how it does it, so that I know how he tries to do it, and later on I can tell him to do it. In other words, when I try to connect to Wells, your mascot sure likes to be the center of attention up there.
Point your freight writing, he's afraid of you.
First fly to operate packet. Want to take him home and train him less? Have him walk on the keys?
Get some right. Lindbergh had one with him, and going good luck.
But anyway, the point is, let's say normally I tell DEN to connect to HPARC, like we did with Wells, and it doesn't make it. If I know the route, how they normally try it, I could say connect to Denver. When I got Denver, I'd say connect to the COS. When I get COS, I tell COS connect to however he gets there. So I can actually set up the link.
Why is that better than letting them do, is it not the same?
Nobody can explain it to me. Theoretically, Denver says he knows how to get to Wells, but I have found that if any node knows how to get beyond 3 nodes, he'll never make it if you tell him to do it. But if you set up the link by hopping every 3rd node, you can get it through. Nobody can explain it to me. Now COS is showing us, okay, this says, now if you'll notice, when we said here, how do you get to HPRC? He says via COS and the path is 144. Then I connected to the COS and I said, how do you get there? And he says, well, I can go here, and I got a 192 because the path from COS to here, which I think is, yeah, it is much better. But if I have to go to ARA4, it's back down to 144. Or I can go via AA0L-1, and I have no idea who that is, but obviously that's going to one or two other nodes because it's got a quality of 108.
Bill,
Yes.
above when you're trying to connect to wells or wells or
Uh-huh.
it's going to Kremlin, is that its first contact,
Yeah.
correct?
When I told DEN to connect to Wells, the first thing he did is he went to Kremling and says, I want to go to Wells. Kremling says, okay, I have to send you to Glenwood Springs. I happen to know the route. So he goes to Glenwood Springs. Glenwood Springs says, oh, you want Wells? That's Grand Junction. So he goes to Grand Junction. Okay?
Do you
So-
see that?
No. That's all transparent to you, the user. That's why we're doing this, to figure out what they're doing so that we can make them do it.
But you know that he initially is going to go to Kremlin?
Yeah, because we asked it. If I tell you to connect to Wells, how are you going to do it? He said, I'm going to go to Kremlin. If I tell you, Denver, to connect to Dinah, how are you going to do it? I'm going to go to Kremlin and then tell him to talk to the next guy. I only know that Kremlin knows how to get me there.
But above there, when route to Wells, it puts Kremlin at 61, doesn't it list how Kremlin's going to get there?
No. No, when I did the nodes, it just told us
First node?
that I know, theoretically, I know that I can get you to these different nodes because the nodes around me have told me they know how to get me to these nodes. See, one of the things that kills you is how the sysops set up some of these nodes. Some of these nodes you connect to, it will give you 4 screens of data telling you can talk to anybody in the world you want.
What's taking to connect so long now on this?
Could be a bad path, could be a fade. See, there's another number in here. There, we made it. See, now normally I would have connected to DEN and said C space HPARC, and he would have done all this. He would have said, well, okay, I'll try this path first. So he would have connected to COS and told COS, get me to Kremlin, get me to HPRC. COS would have done it direct. If for some reason this path had faded out, then COS would have tried this. Next thing we know, we'd have got this. We had no idea how he got us there. Question?
What is the advantage or the difference? Cover this. Some brain cells died here in the last few minutes.
Yeah, it's easy to do in this
Okay,
mode.
you've gone node to HPARC. What happens if you go roots to HPARC? Does that tell you the same one?
No, roots just tell you, when I connect to a node and I say roots, it's going to tell me who it can talk to directly, who it has heard.
So you can't do a roots to HPARC?
No, roots just says what radio channels do you have available to you? Who can you hear and who can hear you? And that's it. Whereas nodes is routing information. In other words, I beacon to COS that I know how to get to Wells. Okay? Because KRE has told me he knows how to get to Wells. So I tell Colorado Springs, I know how to get to Wells. I go to KRE. Okay? So then if somebody connects to COS and does the nodes, it's going to say Wells. If you tell COS to connect you to Wells, COS is going to come to Denver and say, well, Den, you know how to do it. Do it. Den will go to KRE and say, okay, guy, you told me you knew how to do it. And KRE is going to say, well, Grand Junction told me he could, so I'll tell Grand Junction to do it. See? So that's how the nodes list works. And if one of these nodes dies, after a certain period of time goes along and there's no route list passed on, no ID, then it'll come off the nodes list. See? So routes is, who can I hear and talk to directly? Nodes is, can I get you somewhere? Either directly or because somebody told me they can. Okay?
How current is that nodes list, 10, 15 minutes?
Depends on how the sysops set them up. The way it normally works is you have a number on some of these nodes. You have a number here. If it's a 6, that says I heard him within 15 minutes. If it's a 5, it's within a half hour. 4, it's within 45 minutes. But again, the sysop can change that. So you really never know what it's telling you.
Bill, once you're hooked up to Colorado Springs, can you type routes there to here with Colorado Springs?
Yeah, any of the commands we're doing locally, you can do at any node. See? So we could do oops. Didn't I do it?
hear him when we can't hear his voice?
Pardon me?
How can Kremling hear packet when it can't hear voice? I mean, we can't talk simplex stuff.
Well,
We could.
that is pretty incredible. This summer I drove from from Steamboat past Kremling to here. It was the first time I'd been up there, and I couldn't believe it when I saw where it was. It turns out that there's a hot spot where DEN is, which is about 120th, up to Kremling. It turns out, even more amazingly enough, that remember you saw WG0N-10? That's sitting at the Museum of Natural History. It can connect to Steamboat. Now, how it does that, I don't know, because you can try anywhere else in town and you cannot hit it, and it's just a little 3 dB, 4 dB gain antenna. It just happens to be a hot spot. We don't understand it. Okay.
Tell me, Bill, it goes right through Rabbit Ears Pass, right between the ears. I mean,
Right there. Wouldn't surprise me.
I'm looking at it on the map, while that is somewhat true.
But it's definitely subject to weather, I'll tell you that. When the weather is bad, the routes go down, and and that sort of thing. Now, when you look at this is COS talking directly to Sterling.
Yes, but there is another link that I used to use, FNL, then directed to high.
Oh yeah, right.
That is not shown here for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, apparently it isn't making it. We got weather coming through, and you'll see things changing like crazy now. And obviously, the link from COS down through Sterling is weak tonight because we're not getting a response back. It'll take a while. Anyway, what you do when you want to, let's say you want to talk to Salt Lake City a lot. And you know that most of the time, if you connect to DEN and say C space SLC, it won't make it. So you do this. You say, how do you get there to DEN? He'll say KRE. So you'll connect to KRE from DEN. You'll ask KRE, how do you do it? And he will say, oh, you know what? I think HPRC is an old node that doesn't have the routes command. That's why we're not getting an answer. Let me drop out of here. Let me give you a real quick demo here, because I call this exploring the network. How do you determine, because FNL was that way until recently. You did a routes, nothing ever happened because he didn't recognize the command, but he didn't tell you he didn't know it. Now I don't remember.
There's a comparison, Bill. FNL has now been taken over by the Fort Collins Club. HPARC has only got 5 or 6 people in that club to support it. So there's reasons why it's not kept up.
Yeah, I don't remember if that was on the nodes list or not. I know SLC DX was on there. I saw that, which is a DX cluster. So we'll see. But the point is, if you want to regularly go somewhere, you ask a node, you connect to the node, say, how do you get there? Not found. Okay, so that wasn't on there, but there was a... no, it's SLC. It may be down. Normally that's always there, because SLC, I think it was DX I saw on there. But normally what you do is you ask a node, connect a node, and say, how do you get to where I want to go? And it says KRE. So you connect KRE, and you say in space where you want to go. And you work your way through the network and figure out the routing table. So the next time, see, he says KRE. Boy, the path is very bad. The weather must be getting bad up there. It's usually nowhere near that low.
Snow affected?
Oh yeah, temperature inversion, snow. The reason snow affects it is the snow blows on the antenna and creates snow static.
What's the lowest usable number? Is 62 a usable number?
Most of the time it is. But that's a very low number from here to Kremling, so it may not go. But see, the point is now, once I connect to Kremling, I'd say in space SLC DX, and it would tell me GWS, which is Glenwood Springs. So I would say C space GWS, it would connect me to Glenwood Springs. I'd say, okay, in space SLC DX, he would tell me Grand Junction. I would connect to Grand Junction, and I would get there. And then I'd make a note. of that route. So the next time I want to get Salt Lake City, I'd connect to DEN, and then I'd say C-space, maybe Glenwood Springs. I'd jump 2 nodes. When I hit Glenwood Springs, I'd say C-space, maybe Dinah. Okay, so you tell a node to connect to about the second or third node down, and then tell it to do that, and you'll get there. Like I say, nobody's been able to explain to me why a node can tell you it can get you there, but it won't. You know, when you go beyond 3 or 4, but you can force a connection.
That number there, that 62, that's the entire path is though, isn't it, to Salt
No.
Lake DX? Or is that
Oh yeah, that's the path to Salt Lake's DX, right.
okay.
Right, I'm sorry about that. If I'd have said in space KRE, the number would have been a lot higher,
Yeah, okay.
like we had before. I got off sidetracked. I'm glad you caught me on that.
What's the one and the 0 again, Bill?
Okay, the 1, remember I talked about that this can be a 6, which says that it heard that station with the special ID within 15 minutes. If it's a 2, it was within a half hour, 15-minute increments. This says it's been quite a while. That doesn't mean the path necessarily went away. It could have been that when the ID came up, there was somebody else came up and clobbered, and he just didn't hear it. So it's a very rough estimate. And the 0 again means it's radio as opposed to hardwired. But a lot of times when the weather's coming in, the path to KRE just quits.
How about via satellite? People will packet by way of satellite.
Oh yeah. Well, that's like today. I wanted to go to Illinois, so I took 18 megahertz out to California, and then I took several links on 2 meters and 6 meters, and got to Southern California, and then I picked up a satellite and went to Illinois, and then connected to a conference bridge in Illinois, which is where I was trying to get, because I couldn't get there direct.
Bill, what speed do you, on your modem, do you run at satellites? I heard it was a lot slower. Is that so?
Oh no, satellites run like 56 kilobits, but you're only running your normal speed. In other words, you got this one link.
This guy yesterday told me on commercial they run up to 1 meg, and then
Well, commercial is totally different.
and
One,
on the satellites he says it slows you down.
no, most satellites have a basic rate of 1.544 megabits, and then they got a whole bunch of those channels, and everybody's mixed in on them. Same with the ham stuff. So I'm not sure what he was talking about. I have no idea what this satellite is. All I know is there's several satellites around. We stand to have some satellite links coming out of Colorado Springs very shortly. Compliments of one of the high-tech companies down there. And we're really looking forward to it, because I think we're going to have here in Colorado Springs shortly what I was getting to in Illinois. There's a worldwide conference bridge. And you can sit there and say, well, we finally made it. That took a lot of retries, so you know the weather's bad up there. But anyway, this worldwide conference bridge, you connect to it and you can talk to somebody in Australia, New Zealand, or whatever via satellite links. And it looks like we're going to get one of these nodes out of Colorado Springs, which would be neat. Okay. Notice that this node is much closer to Salt Lake City than this node. So our quality is getting better as we get closer. What he's telling us, from this guy, which happens to be Steamboat Springs, the quality to Salt Lake City is an 82. From this node, which is Denver, to Salt Lake City, it's only 62. See how that works? So now I could say, okay, C-space. See, this is the old style. It didn't give me the alias like Denver. Remember when I connected to Denver and I went nodes, it said ARA, gave me the aliases. So now I could connect to this guy, which happens to be Steamboat Springs, N0 LEU-1. And then when I connect to him, I could do in-space SLC-DX and say, how do you get me there? You see how we're doing this? We're asking each node as we connect to it, how would you get me there? What's the next node that you would ask to get me there? Who told you that you could get me there? And then I would connect to that node and say, okay, how do you get me there?
Now, Bill, so that doesn't matter if you're dealing with CAM type operation.
This is strictly ROM and D-NET. Okay?
We're still on net ROM and D-NET.
Pardon me?
We're still dealing with the net ROM and
Yeah,
D-NET. Right?
we're only talking about net ROM and D-NET because they are the only ones that have routing, automatic routing. See, when you get into K-nodes and MSys and some of the other packages that are out there, they are strictly at a level 2. All they do is tell you who they can hear. Okay? So if you want to go somewhere, you have to know or figure it out on those. We'll demo all that. Okay, now we're at Steamboat. Now I could do the same thing. I could say in space SLC DX, and he'd come back and he'd give me a higher number here, like maybe 95. He'd probably say DINA for Dinosaur National Park. Okay, he might give me another route via Abijo, which happens to sit right on the border between Colorado and Nevada. So I would pick the best route. I would connect to DINA, and I'd say to DINA, how do you get me there? And DINA would tell me. See, so I could sit here and do this for a while and come up with a map if I wanted to. Now, it just so happens if I logged into LJF and got a map, then I could see who talks to who, and I could just sit down and just set them all up. So that's kind of exploring the network. Okay, now.
If you were lazy and had a lot of time to spend, could you just command it to connect to Salt Lake City DX and eventually that would have happened?
No. Remember we did to Wells?
No.
Yeah, you got to hop about every third node or so. Because remember we tried to talk to Wells and it didn't make it? It's nobody can explain it to me. I've had people tell me, well, if you tell the node to do it, if it says it can do it and you tell it to do it and it doesn't do it, you'll never make it. And I counter that with, well, why can I go to San Jose, California when Denver doesn't even know where it exists? But I know the route, so I can set it up and it gets there. So not only can I make it go to places they tell me that it can go to, I can make it go to places it doesn't even know exist. See? And nobody's been able to explain that to me.
When DEN hears that, you're talking to California, will they put it in its node list?
No, because that's that special ID. See, every time they send a special ID, they set that PID bit we talked about, and that tells any other node that if you hear this, this is information for you. Okay, so when I'm talking to California and vice versa, I'm talking as a user. So any iframe that's coming back from California, the nodes along the chain just say, well, that's user data, pass it on. They don't even look at it. Okay, so you got housekeeping level 3 frames that the nodes use to talk to each other. And then you got user data, which the nodes just pass on and act and things like that. I don't know if I've got this thing set up right or not.
Are you going to show us how to use the CQ?
That's what I'm attempting to do now, if I know how to turn on the monitor on this thing. I thought I had it on, but how come it's not copying UIs? Oh, it must be MCON. See if this does. Oops. Like I say, I'm not real comfortable running this cam. Hey, there's our friend TX. Okay. See, I had the monitors turned on now. So I sent an iframe saying, give me information. We saw TXID. Here's DEN, the source, talking to the destination, which is us. The reason we have a -1 on Joe's call is so his station at home doesn't respond to us, or to DEN thinking it's him. It's on the voice channel. It's an iframe. It's number 0. And then here's the information. Now,
You mean voice or VHF channel?
VHF. Did I say voice? I'm sorry.
Voice.
I'm sorry. So, okay, I'll send a CQ. See if this works. There we go. I sent a CQ. Now, we have a -1 behind our call, right? So when it went out as -14 because it was already a -1. In other words, If there's no SSID behind your call, he'll put a minus 15. If there's an SSID, well, then he'll subtract it. Here's what happened. I sent a CQ to DEN. DEN turned around and sent it out with our call. CQ, it's an unnumbered information frame. Now, for 15 minutes now, that node is sitting there, and anybody that happens to look on their screen and see this can just type C space KE0QA-14, okay? And the node will say, you're connected, and then tell me that I'm connected to whoever just connected to me. So you don't have to sit there and call CQ every 20 seconds, brap, 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 because if anybody is wanting to look for a CQ, they will turn the monitor on just like we did. Occasionally look at the screen and say, oh, hey, he called CQ. I'll see if I can answer him. Now, if I want to say something, I type CQ. This is a demo. Now, notice what happened. The CQ caused the node to send out my CQ. Whatever I typed after that went out as text. So I could have said, Denver, Colorado, or I'm very lonely, come talk to me. See? There, Denver just came up and ID'd.
Hey Bill, before it scrolls up too much higher, at W0TX, I don't think we had before where it said DRC box/Baker. What's that?
Yeah, DRC/D is a digi within the same frequency that you're on. -3 is the gateway, which means it's a crossband digi. If I digi through -3, it's going to go out on the other frequency. If I digi through DRC, it's going to be on my same frequency.
The B.
Oh, the B? This one? Okay, that's the mailbox.
B for beacon.
B for box, I guess. Well, BBS is what you normally call them, so I guess B for BBS. I'm so used to looking at it, I didn't think of it, but that's a mailbox. And we'll connect to this stuff next week and show you the mailbox functions and what they are. Now, if you'll notice, every time I want to send a CQ, I got to go type CQ. And one CQ will go out with the text. All the node does is it sends out the CQ and it remains open for 15 minutes as long as I stay there. Anybody can connect to -14 and it will tell me that somebody's there. And then I can type to them, okay?
How do they see that message?
By doing what I just did. I went up here and I turned MCON on. And I turned monitor on. Monitor says that I want to see, on the cam, monitor says that I want to see other stuff on the frequency besides what's to me. MCON on says I want to see other stuff on the frequency while I'm connected. Monitor while connected, monitor while not connected. Okay? So I turned on the monitor and I'm looking for any of these kind of frames. So when I typed this and then Denver sent out this, I saw it. See, I could have been anybody. So you can set your TNC up to automatically do this periodically for you, like every 5 minutes or something. Okay, but anybody that wants is looking for a CQ, they're going to set the thing up, and every few minutes they'll glance at the screen. And it'll be on their screen. So you don't have to sit there and go beacon, 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 CQ, CQ, like you do on HF. Just send out one every 5 minutes or so, and then somebody that's got their monitor on to see this kind of thing will look at it and say, oh, hey, I'll talk to him, see. So you don't need a beacon lot. Got one other question back here.
You hit return, I think it should say CQ as well.
I don't know on this one.
If you're in the,
My cam does.
you're in the,
See, I doubt it because the CQ we're seeing is from DEN, not from this. We're not calling CQ from this. We're calling CQ from DEN. So you got to tell DEN to do it. So I hit carriage return and nothing happened. See? So every time I want DEN or D-NET or NetROM to send CQ, I got to say CQ, which remember that was on his command line? And then if I want text, I put a space and then the text. And he'll send out the UI frame with CQ, and then he'll send out the text. We haven't talked about sending CQ from the TNC. That's totally a different story. There you can just go to the command mode. Depending on how you have BTEX set up, you can make it say anything you want. But we haven't gotten into that yet. I don't get too heavy into that because that's in your book with the TNC. This stuff isn't written anywhere. So that's why I tend to concentrate more on using the net than using the TNC. Because you can read about TNC, you can't read most of this stuff. Did that answer your question? Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So when you send out this CQ, every node that can hear this station on 145.01 put us into their node list?
No.
Or into their herd list?
No, we're a user just calling CQ from here. Now I could have said, let me try this. I don't know if this will work or not. CQ via ARA4. I think I can change CQs. No, can't do it. When I say, in other words, I could connect to Denver, then tell Denver to connect to ARA4, and then type CQ test, and then ARA4 will send it out. Okay? Because I connected to DEN, told it to connect to ARA4. From now on, anything I send out is going to go to ARA4. So if I type CQ, that's a command to him to echo the CQ. Does that make sense?
As an example, if I went through WGON 7, connected to Puget, if I type, and I got link made, if I type CQ to the people in the Seattle area see my CQ.
They will see your CQ. Now, ARA and DEN aren't hearing each other very well. I said C space ARA4. I told Denver to connect to ARA4. He sent out a connect request. There, we made it. Now, CQ. In other words, I told Denver to connect to ARA4. He came back with a UA on the second one. See, in other words, DEN sent a connect request to ARA4. ARA4 sent a UA back. DEN didn't hear it for some reason. It got clobbered. DEN sent the connect request again to ARA4. We got the UA back. Then Denver told us we're connected. So now I type C space, or CQ space test, and now it went out from ARA4. Now here's one of the inconsistencies. We still got a 14 behind our call. So sysop has something weird in that node. You can't put a whole lot of credence on SSIDs in this case. Anyway, the point is, I connected to Denver, told it to connect to another node, and I told that other node to call CQ for me. Now whoever can hear ARA4 would say C space KE0QA-14, and I would get a message here saying, you are connected to whoever. So you can go through these nodes. It's kind of fun, you know, I like to go to Salt Lake City and then do an H and see who you hear. Or maybe just call CQ a few times. Say CQ, I usually say CQ, DE, for that's the old CW, from DE, Denver, Colorado. And a lot of times I'll get a message back saying, Denver, how are you doing it? Because most people don't understand this. And it's fun. The other day I got a printout 2 pages long from a guy in California. I went in some nodes, I saw him, I connected to him. I said, hi, I'm running 1 watt here on 2 meters in Denver. And he couldn't believe it. And he said, explain it to me. And I explained it to him. He says, well, I'll let you guys that know how to do this understand it. And then 3 days later, I get printout. He says, I just want to send this to you. He says, I got to hang it on my wall so people come here and see that you can do things like this. Please send me your QSL card. So it's fun to do this. It really is. And with that, we better cut it because we really got wound up tonight. But we'll continue all this stuff tomorrow, next